In today's episode, I am delighted to be joined by Jamie Fair. Jamie, you are a speaker, author, visionary, and coach. You have over 30 years of professional leadership experience and a dozen years in the interpersonal workspace, and you combine your passion for teaching leadership skills along with your love of coaching life skills. In your life, you have come from penniless and nearly homeless to achieving heights professionally, financially, and in your personal and spiritual life. And you are passionate about helping others see what's truly possible for them in their own life. Jamie, welcome to Personal Development Master. It's a joy to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Augie. I'm so excited and honored to be here. This has been a long time in the coming, and I could beyond thrilled to be here today.
And so am I. And yes, we've built up to it very. So it's always fascinating when eventually it happens. Jamie, we will discuss today about your story of transformation, about the motivation. We said we will focus on motivation and creating lasting motivation. Before we go there, can you give us a key defining moment in your life journey that is relevant to the conversation and, will set the tone for what we're going to discuss from then on?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for asking. For me, it really was a time in my life when I was running out of food and money. I had very low self-esteem. I was doing the jobs nobody else wanted to do. I could not seem to keep a job for very long. And I was slowly running out of money. And I knew it was coming, but I really just kept trying to ignore it, hoping something would change, maybe some miracle would occur. But I was running out of food. And the time that really changed everything for me was I opened the cupboard that morning and I knew what I was going to find. And all that was there was a leftover jar of peanut butter. And that was my meal, right? For every meal that day. That's all I had left for food. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. In that moment, I was so frustrated and so down and so just, I didn't know what was next. It was like, I'm going to be homeless next. I don't know where to go from here. And in that moment,
how long ago was that, Jamie? How long ago was that?
Oh, it was 30 years ago. It was quite a while ago. Yeah.
Yes, please carry on.
And in that moment, something inside of me just was so tired of living this way. And I just remember it was like this voice rose up inside of me. This fire came up, and out of my voice, I just yelled, "This is not how I was meant to live." And I just knew right then I was not going to go down that way. That was not why I came here. That was not my intention or my purpose for being here. And I was not going to go out that way. And I made a decision there and then that I was going to change my life. I was never going to be this, close to homeless or this living in scarcity again. And it did. And I changed my life. That was the decision I needed. That was the catalyst, the momentum for me to turn everything around and stop living that way.
Thank you. I got from that story, there was something you said that before that day you were kind of, even though you knew that you were not doing well, you were hoping, you said, for something to happen, like something to save you. So that's something interesting as an observation. What I wanted to ask was, so when you got the decision, can you tell me specifically what actions, one or two actions you took when you took the decision that that's it, I'm not going to carry on like that? One or two things that you did differently as a result of that decision.
Yeah, I think in your personal development podcast here, most folks are familiar with, you keep doing the same thing, you keep getting the same results. So I had to do something different for sure. I went back to school. That was one thing I did. I had technical skills. I worked on computers as a kid, but I needed a piece of paper that said that I could do it. So I went back to school. I spent 2 years going to a technical school where there was like 1 week break during Christmas, and that was it. And I couldn't afford a car, so I rode a bus from my house down to the main road, and then another bus down the road toward the school, then another bus over to the school. Then I would get out of my school, take the bus back and go to work. And then I turn around after work, so I was doing work and school for about 2 years straight. That was one thing I just committed. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm never going to go back there, no matter how hard or how long this takes. I know there's an end to it. I'm going to be, 2 years older anyway. I might as well be 2 years older and have that piece of paper that says I can do the job. So that was one big thing. I decided to start working on myself. That was another one. I knew that my mindset was not going to help me get anywhere, and that my confidence level was not going to help me get anywhere. And so I began to work on that part of me as well. Meditation became a big part of my life.
I was about to ask you, and you answered in part before I asked, was the actual shifts that happened in your mindset as a result of the decisions. And what I'm in particular, because mindset is very broad, but the way that you were thinking of yourself, and whether there was some kind of emotional element there that, often in situations like this, we don't feel good about ourselves. So was there something that shifted as a result of the decision? Did you look at yourself in a maybe more compassionate way, if that is fair to say?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started meditating, and at first it was awkward. I had no teacher. I had no book. I just started closing my eyes to see what would happen. And I just kept doing it. And it would be like an hour a day, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 hours a day I would get into meditation. It was kind of like my escape. But during that process, I started realizing that the me I had built up, the things that I felt were important about me, didn't matter. They really didn't make a difference whatsoever. And piece by piece, I began to pull those bricks out of this wall that I'd built around myself to say, oh, this is why I'm great, because of this, because of that. And I'd look at it, and, after my meditation for a while, I'd look at it and realize, no, that doesn't matter. No one cares about that. I don't care about that. And I began to kind of pull apart this version of me that I had created. And I reached a point where I felt lost, honestly, for a while, because I had defined myself and all these things that then I had torn apart. And then it was like, well, who am I now? What am I really? What am I doing here? And all those big questions start coming up. And then I started to rebuild myself a brick at a time, just one piece at a time. I'd think, you know what? I'm a kind person. And that would be a brick that I would build, about myself. And I just kept doing that, adding things that were real, that mattered, that made a difference out there. And over time, it started to impact not only me inside, but I started to see the reflection on the outside world. I really believe that's what it comes down to for us. I saw a quote I really like, and it said, consider for a moment that everything you think, feel, and experience in the world is a direct reflection of your inner well-being. And that is absolutely true. I believe it, with every stitch of my body there and my soul, that is a truth. And so as I began to change the me inside, I began to see those changes in the outside world, and my life began to improve externally as well.
That's beautiful. Let me go back a little bit with what you said with the meditation, that you started doing many hours a day. Were you using a particular technique in that meditation? Because you said you didn't have a teacher, or was it a certain method of meditation?
Yeah, no, there was, without a teacher or a book to study, I just began to experiment and find what worked for me. So first thing I would do was, and I didn't do it sitting, although that's the style I've learned since I joined a Zen group here, but I would just lay in bed. And for a while, it became kind of confusing to differentiate between sleep and meditation and that, but I got pretty good at it after a time. But I'd find myself falling asleep pretty often, but you get better at it over time. And one of the things I would first initially do was just start at the top of my head and work, like, imagine there's an energy going into my body that would relax and soothe that part of my body. And so I would just feel the muscles and tension release and work my way all the way down my body. That would get me into this state where I was less in my physical body and more in my wherever else we go.
That's great. Thank you. The way you describe it reminds me very much of the Vipassana meditation technique, where you pretty much scan your body like that. So
Right.
it's always interesting, with meditation, because different people experience different, let's say, results or states, if you want, or insights. I think it's probably a more appropriate word to use, because
Yeah.
a state or anything else you experience during the meditation is transient and it will go away. But if there is an insight that comes as a result of that, that insight usually changes your point of perception, and it changes really your decisions and your actions. So do you want to share some kind of insight like that you had in your meditation experience that really changed your perception?
Absolutely. One thing that kept coming up for me was old memories would come up. And at first I'm like, why are all these old, like things I had totally forgotten about would begin to surface into my mind. And they were memories I'd forgotten about or long since buried. And at first I just thought it was so odd that all these old memories were coming up. And soon I began to realize it was an opportunity for me to see them in a different light, see them differently than I had when they first occurred. And in my, I don't want to say more mature, but in my wiser, or not sure what the word is, I had a different perspective all of a sudden. And when I looked back at that event that had happened in my childhood or during school work, typically things that I felt were kind of traumatic or things that bothered me or stuck with me, and I had buried those feelings and those memories. They would come back up again, and it would give me an opportunity to see them from a different perspective. And I could see, oh, I see where I learned something here, or I see where I gained some value here, or I see where I became more empathetic or more kind. And all those things from our past that we typically want to just shove down and not look at again, I think if we can bring those to the surface and really look at them from a different perspective, we can see that they all have value, that there was some reason that they occurred. And as I did that, it began to change, it's difficult to describe, but it began to change the inside of me, because all those memories were what I was made of. And as those memories began to shift and became different and more empowering, so did that inside of me. And confidence began to build inside of me. I began to feel more certain about me and my direction, and loving of myself, which was, I think the goal for a lot of this personal development work is how much do you love yourself? Most of us kind of beat ourselves up instead. So, that's really what I gained a lot. And over time, once I had done that, each memory would keep coming up until I had, dealt with it, we'll call it. And as soon as I did, it would disappear and it would never come up again. So I really believe memories, things coming up like that for us during meditation or anytime we quiet our mind, are opportunities.
Like earlier on, you said that you used the phrase pull apart the version of you that you had created, and you rebuilt it. And now you were saying about these memories again, pulling them apart. And again, the way you were saying it in my mind, it came like as a burden that we have, or some, stuck energy, if you want, whatever you want to call it, something that blocks a part of you that could be freer. And it's great that you describe it like that. Do you want to share one more insight? I like the way this conversation, the direction it's going.
What else would I share? I think in a lot of cases where we set, and this started in meditation, but I saw it externally. When we set goals, they are often goals and dreams. We typically look at, like when I was a child, I wanted to be a leader. And yet I saw no possible way I could go from this, scared, shy kid to becoming a leader of people. But now through my experience and through this work in meditation, I fully believe, I'm 100% certain that if we have that intention, if we set that intention, or we have a dream like that, we may not have the skills right now, but we will acquire them along the way. life will give us whatever we need, the experiences, the challenges, the things that we need to overcome in order to create those skills for us. So that by the time we get to that point where we're ready to accept that, we have built those skills up. So I think in a lot of cases we set goals and we go, oh, I can't do that. That's outside of my scope. There's no way I could do that kind of a thing. But I want to encourage everyone to just go for those dreams, because you will get the skills along the way. They will come.
You didn't say that. I'm going to use my own words for that, so I'm not putting those words in your mouth. But to me, it sounded like have trust, have faith in the journey that you're going to undertake, that you will be looked after in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's, very... the undercurrent of this notion for me is quite spiritual in a way, like that we are part of something bigger, that there is a bigger plan and we follow it. And when we do, let's say, walk on the path of our purpose, and I will say it very carefully, then that unfolds the mystery that potentially awaits, and that's for the greater good. I don't know, this just came up to me now to share. I don't even know where it came from. I've never said something like
Beautiful.
this before. So it was great that you inspired me to
Awesome. Yeah, I really believe that we are not given a dream without also being given the ability to make it true. Every dream, whatever it is you have the ability to make it come true. You just have to trust that you can get there and that you will acquire the skills you need along the way.
Absolutely. Do you want to somehow start merging what we've said so far with the motivation that we were saying about, creating lasting motivation? Because it's one thing to what we're talking about, to have the insights and really feel within you the desire to change, or even, knowing what to do to change. However, most of us, and we know very well that from that moment of decision, when we start taking action, there will be obstacles that have to be overcome with. And many of these obstacles is that what we're setting out to do takes us out of our comfort zone, or sometimes we don't feel like it, or life takes over. And so in a way, the motivation, maintaining the motivation, or building, I think you say creating the motivation, is something I believe essential. And so I would like to, bridge the topic towards there. So tell me about, how do you perceive what I just said, and tell me also what you want to share about this topic of creating motivation.
Yeah. So I those obstacles that come up that you mentioned, which always come up, I think they are intentional. They are part of the journey, and they are opportunities for us to grow. So those obstacles are there for a reason. They're not to get in our way. They're not to stop us. They're to cause us to grow and change, to reach that, that thing that we're searching for, that we're going after. And motivation. So I don't think motivation just happens. Many of us we're waiting for that day when we feel motivated to go after our dream or to go after what we want. And I don't believe that's going to happen ever. Motivation doesn't just suddenly come upon you one day. It's possible, sure, but I think we need to create motivation. So if you'll excuse the brief plug, I co-authored a book called A Journey of Riches, Motivate Your Life. And in there, I wrote a chapter called Creating Lasting Motivation that you brought up. And it is all about how you create motivation. And it starts with having one of those dreams, having something that scares you a little bit, particularly. Those are the best dreams, right? The ones like, ooh, that's scary to think about. That's how we start to create motivation, is by having a dream and then having the willingness to go after it, even though it's scary, probably outside of our comfort zone, and even though we know those obstacles are coming. In that chapter, I'll talk about the three big detractors that happen when we decide to create motivation. That's like overwhelm, self-criticism, and of course, fear. Fear is a big one. That's what gets in our way a lot. And personally, I think that fears are meant to be pushed on. Almost always, if there's something that you want, but it's scary, then on the other side of that fear is something amazing for you. And in my life, it was public speaking. I was utterly terrified of public speaking. I would have rather died than done public speaking or a podcast like today, for instance. Like, it was one of my two greatest fears in my life, heights and public speaking. And yet life began to happen. All these events started, happening to me where I was required to do speaking engagements over and over, speaking events. I remember a big one for me was I'd started my job in leadership, and there was a company meeting, and we were all listening to a couple speakers, and out of the blue, someone said, "Hey, Jamie, will you come talk about that thing that's happening in your department?" And I had never spoken in front of a group outside of my little meetings with my own team, which were scary enough. And I had to get past them, right? This is that growth thing. It starts out small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I got up in front of all these people from this company, and I just completely locked up. I remember just like the words would not come out. I was so scared. And people started to get a little restless because I couldn't say anything. And I realized, like, I have two choices. I can go sit back down and be completely embarrassed for who knows how long, or I can find some way through this. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I pushed hard and I forced myself to speak. And once I got going, I was great. I was funny. People were laughing, but I had to get past that initial fear first. And over, things like that happened. I've worked my way up to doing podcasts and then live podcasts and then some live videos, but it just keeps escalating in my life, regardless of where I am in my life. It just keeps escalating. And don't think for a moment that it doesn't terrify me, because it does. I don't sleep the nights before. I stay up, I get sweaty during these every time, but I just don't let it stop me, because what I discovered was on the other side of that fear is a love of public speaking, a love of sharing these messages that I have, of these experiences that I had, and how I can help others in their lives. So I really want to encourage people to, whatever it is, whatever your fear is, to not let it just sit there. It's never going to change as long as you don't do anything about it. So I call it, wearing away at your fear, eroding on that wall of fear. For heights, for me, for instance, I will take opportunities to go do things that are well outside of my comfort zone. I'll tell another story sometime. We have more time, but push yourself. Just keep pushing. Not a lot. You don't have to do it a lot, but a little bit all the time. Wear that wall down. Eventually, it will be so low you can just walk over it, like public speaking is for me. And you'll find on the other side is something beautiful and something you're probably passionate about. And that's why that fear existed in the first place.
Indeed, on the other side of your fear, it is something wonderful awaits, and the fear is the obstacle that is put there to test you, shall we say, from having it, because it's not just given. It is given to us, but we have to, open the door, as the phrase says. The door is shown to us, but we have to open it, and with two things. One was public speaking in particular that you said is also my part of the fear in my personal transformation. When I had my light bulb moment, I say often in my story, and it is important. And what I wanted to share earlier, the other thing was what when you step out of beyond, let's say, past your fear, and you do that thing that you were afraid of, I think the most important benefit you reap, apart from the outcome that you get, I think the most important benefit you reap is how you feel about yourself. Your self-worth immediately increases. You think, wow, I've done it. And that is, for me, the most empowering feeling. And of course, the outcome is also lovely to have. But it's that internal.
If I can do this, what else can I do now?
Yeah.
Comes up, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And it is that then the spiral of growth, of personal development, of growth and contribution, and all these wonderful things. It is like, but we have to put effort into it. It doesn't happen automatically. As a matter of fact, sadly, it's the opposite. It happens automatically. If we don't put effort, it's very effortless to go down. We will never stay the same. We will go down without effort. So
let me share one more thing, if I may, about
sure, yes,
for people. So motivation also, I believe, comes, and this is silly, but a long time ago, someone discovered that, hey, if I give an animal a treat for doing something, it continues to do that process. And it worked so well, we started doing it with our kids, right? This is how I taught my kids. We all did this, I'm pretty sure. We believe in this carrot and stick method. Well, yet so many of us, we don't do that on ourselves. We do the stick method. And I'm sure for those of you who've ever raised a dog, you've seen other dogs who got the stick their whole lives. And they are not in a happy place, right? They are beat down. They're not motivated. They're afraid of everything. So if we want to move away from that aspect and become more empowered, then we've got to give ourselves those carrots. We've got to give ourselves a treat. So we've got to reward ourselves, particularly with overachievers. We hit a goal, and I think all of us do this. We hit a goal, and then it's on to the next goal. Okay, check that one off, and on to the next thing, right? Okay, I got that. And we rarely take the time to celebrate those wins. And I think this is so critical because although you may not consciously realize it, there's a part of us. I read somewhere like 80% of teachers use a reward system in school too. So this is programmed into us, right? So why don't we just leverage this programming and start rewarding ourselves? Small rewards for small accomplishments, big rewards for big accomplishments. It doesn't have to be that's something you buy, but it could be going out to eat. It could be I'm going to go see my friend for the first time, whatever it is. But you really need to reward yourself, and you'll find that your mind will suddenly want to start going in that direction because it knows there's a a treat at the other end. So I really want to encourage people to please reward yourself. And the same thing goes, are you a taskmaster for yourself or are you a coach? If you went out in the garden and you weed and it was full of weeds and you spent hours and hours weeding the thing, and then you ran inside and got all excited to tell your partner about it, and they came out and they started going, well, you forgot that weed there and you kind of hurt that plant over there. They just started critiquing it. It just kills your motivation. You don't have no desire to do it again, right? You're suddenly like, oh, this big letdown when you wanted to share. So are you doing that to yourself, right? How are we doing to ourselves? When we don't succeed or when we slip up, are we beating ourselves up? We're going, that's okay. Stuff happens. We're going to do it again next time. So are you a taskmaster or a coach with yourself? Because that's also going to make a huge difference in how your motivation is created and how long it's going to last.
Thank you. And when you were saying about rewarding yourself, I thought sometimes even the simplest thing, which is to acknowledge and maybe, tap ourselves on the back or look ourselves in the mirror, say, well done, you've done something well done. So that is a reward. And I really like the way you presented it because it really creates within us the desire to have more of it, and then we attract it. Jamie, I would like to ask you to offer to us something actionable, for someone listening right now and wanting to build on that motivation. Can you offer one actionable thing he or she can do starting tomorrow morning to build more motivation?
Yeah, it really comes down to, and this is going to sound woo-woo to some people, but visualize what you want. Mm-hmm. And I know that sounds silly in this day and age. Some people are like, yeah, that's pretty woo-woo. Maybe your listeners are different from most. But let me give you a real-world example. I think everyone knows Michael Phelps, right? 23 gold medals. This guy trains 365 days a year. Even on his birthday, he is training. And yet this athlete who has accomplished more gold medals than most people combined, his coach has him visualizing 2 hours a day every single day. So that's not an accident, right? There's a correlation between what he's doing. He's visualizing himself succeeding. And I've listened to him talk about it. He visualizes the perspective from himself. He visualizes the perspective from the audience, from the judge's perspective, from up in the sky. He brings in all the feelings. He brings in all five senses about it. And then he also reviews what would happen if he lost his goggles or he fell behind and how he would adjust for that. And the idea being that when he gets to that point where something goes awry, something out of unexpected, he's already prepared for it. He already knows how to deal with it because he's been visualizing it. And that visualization process, whether you want to call it the law of attraction or setting your reticular activating system, science or woo-woo, whatever version of you want, this man is proof that it works. So I want to encourage everyone, visualize what you want. Spend some time every day visualizing it. Set that intention, set your mind focused on that, because then your mind or the universe, however you look at it, will begin to bring to you those things that will help you accomplish that visualization to make it a reality.
Thank you. That's a very useful and very practical. I believe it's scientifically proven now. It's not, if for someone is Google, they really need to research a little bit more. I also remember Michael Jordan that would spend time thinking that he's shooting free throws, like visualizing. So it is all great athletes, or not, maybe not all, but many great athletes.
No, they all do it. Look at the thing about basketball players. Before they shoot, what are they doing? They're seeing themselves dunking it in. Golfers, before they swing, right?
Exactly.
Everyone does it. All the pro athletes do it, so why aren't we?
Yeah. It's what Tony Robbins says, create results in advance, in your mind, in your mind's eye. So it is exactly that. So thank you, Jamie, for that.
My pleasure.
I do have some quick fire questions to start wrapping this conversation up.
Okay.
Before I ask you, can you share with the listener what's the best way to find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, I would say just shoot me an email. My email address is Jamie, Jamie, at FireUpLife. So FireUpLife, Jamie at FireUpLife.com. And yeah, I'd love to talk to listeners. By all means, reach out.
Brilliant. Thank you. And let me ask you then a couple of quick fire questions. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Personal development means to me being willing to go inside and make changes where we know they need to be made, and being willing to push through the obstacles, the fear, and this sense of worthiness that we often run up against when trying to make change.
And hypothetically, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
I would tell him what I told you earlier, that no matter what dream you have, it is possible for you to achieve it. Just go for it. You are so much more than you think you are. Wherever we are in the stage of life, you can be more. You're not small. You are, all of us. We are huge. Yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself. Don't be afraid. Just go for it, man.
Jamie, I want to thank you very much for this fascinating conversation. I really I found it absorbing, and I hope that the listener has gotten something very insightful from it, which of course it will be different for different people. I want to wish you all the very best with your journey of growth and contribution and what you do. Do you have any closing thoughts on today's conversation?
Yeah, I want to leave people with the thought that how you perceive the world is how you're going to live. So Tony Robbins talks a little bit about this, but I saw it in my life as well. If there's a traumatic event when you are young, so let's say two different children, they both experience a death in the family. And one child sees this as, wow, life is out to get me. I never know when it's going to, when bad things are going to happen. I got to look out. They typically will be overly prepared in all cases. They're going to be just always paranoid, looking for something to happen. The other child instead sees it as, life is precious. I need to embrace every moment. I need to love fully and live fully because there's only so much life, and life is short and precious. my daughter, she got diabetes when she was about 13. And because she felt so different from other kids, we ended up taking her to a diabetic summer camp where all the kids are diabetic. And so everyone feels like it's just part of the routine. It's part of normal. And before I went, I got the best advice I've ever gotten. A guy whose child had gotten diabetes at age 5 said to me, you're going to go there and you're going to see 2 different groups of parents. Excuse me. One group is going to be like, why did this happen to us? Poor us. I can't believe this is happening. This is awful. And the other group is going to be like, you know what? Stuff happens. Oh, well, let's move on. And you will see a massive difference in the adjustment levels of those kids. So life very much is about how we perceive it, and it will make all the difference in the world for you. So please take life as a joy. If you're waiting for external circumstances to change in order to be happy, you're going to be waiting forever. Find some joy in this moment. That's all happiness is finding joy right now.
Thank you.